Right, thanks for the question. So we sometimes joke about that running a bank is more like having a technology company with a banking license, because a lot of things are actually bolted down in technology, and quite often it's the technology that's limiting the banks from doing certain things, especially when you look at the more established and the older ones. But going back to the start, I'm Kaspar. I'm actually the alumni of the building where we're standing at the moment, and alumni of both faculties. So I have both an economic degree and a degree in computer science. And actually I've been kind of exposed to machine learning, or AI as it's now called with the hype word, already going back about 12 years, when I was running a startup trying to do cross-browser testing using machine learning and computer vision. And over these years, I think we've come a long way. And actually, I think people start to appreciate what has happened only in the last year. And I consider myself more of a user of this technology rather than a creator. So I've always had people around me who know this stuff a lot better than I ever have. But from entrepreneurship, I still try to keep my roots, but I've somehow landed in finance or banking world. And this is an interesting world, because if you look at the LHV group, then it's 2 banks in 2 countries, in Estonia and UK, an insurance company, an asset management company, and a couple of smaller entities as well, all in the finance world. And LHV Group is actually in Estonia, it's the 3rd largest bank, and with its banking services arm is actually indirectly serving more than 10 million customers in Europe. And banking is a hard place to be, because to run one bank, our compliance department once did the count, and you need to be compliant with about 17,000 pages of regulation. And simply to wrap your head around 17,000 pages, I think you have 2 suspicions. Either these pages were generated with AI, and you need some help to make sure that you're covering all the aspects that you should be covering. But when we talk about AI, I think that we've been there before. And this picture is from late 50s, early 60s. And the people on the picture, the women there, their job was actually very straightforward. They are computers. So a computer was an actual job, and well, they had to compute. Nowadays, these computers are on our desk, on our wrist, in our mobile phone, and in many, many other places. So I think the AI is becoming sort of the same type of thing as many of my previous speakers have brought out. And it's just the aspects that it will touch, it will be all over the place. And if you think about it, then in the 90s, our founder, Rain was also said that he was working in his job, one of his first jobs. He was the first person to have a computer on his desk. Now, you cannot really imagine any job when you don't have a computer on your desk. And deriving from that, it's pretty clear where LHV's bets will be, that AI is something that needs to be on every person's desk. And the idea is very simple. We already have a team in place who's helping with some more specific AI topics in the areas where We see that we can build our own custom models. Unfortunately, cannot speak all that much about specifics at the moment, but we're expecting to have a tool in every employee's hand by the end of this year, beginning of next year, that actually is compliant with banking regulations. So when you're dealing with banking, or in finance in general, the bank secrecy is something that needs to be taken really, really seriously. And risk is always the first word that jumps into any board member's mind when you're dealing with anything new. What is the risk is the first question, and what are we dealing with? Is there any danger of breaching any regulation? So banking world, by and large, is quite often driven by fear, not opportunity. And when we put the AI in the hands of every employee, we need to be pretty sure that the data that the people put in there is not going traveling anywhere. And this is why, to my taste, it takes a bit longer, but we need to absolutely consider the risks. And if you put all these things together, it's pretty simple. Just give it to the people and make sure that people have the ability to put their creative minds to use, and let's see what comes out of it. LHV has been a very innovative and technological company to begin with. So having something cutting edge is absolutely in our DNA. Now, when you zoom back a little bit, what is the problem? The typical problem in banking is coming from a sketch known from a TV series, Little Britain, when bankers in general are deemed to be lazy, complacent, and it's simpler to just hammer a few keys and say no to customers. Today's reality is somewhat different. I mean, any bank wants to do business, any bank wants to serve their customers in general. However, it's usually the technology that tends to limit it. So when you're, for instance, giving out loan or evaluating a loan application, then it's actually a pretty automated process when we are talking about smaller loans. But when we are talking about this kind of automated process, then it usually is limited to algorithmic thinking. And this is actually a place where AI can bring on board a lot of change, because it is enables us to tolerate a lot more variables and make more unique decisions. And this is just one example where banking can become a lot more personal and cater more unique circumstances. Because the typical case of any company or person who's going in to apply for a loan is that the bank doesn't understand me, or the bank simply says no because I don't fit into a specific bracket of which is large enough for the bank to take interest in. So the future is that it will be a lot more nuanced, all the decisions that come out of these models. But there is also a downside or a risk again. So for instance, we need to cater for bias, because any model is only as good as the data it's been fed on. And an interesting, or maybe we can say also a sad example, is when Apple got a fine due to its, when Apple was giving out credit cards, and they got fined because their model, which was giving out or making the decision to give out the credit card, was biased towards male applicants. So men got more applications with a positive answer compared to female. And that was because the data that was being fed into the model was biased to begin with. So this is the downside. You need to be really, really clear on the data that's being fed to the models. And going forward, we have a lot more parameters, we have a lot more complex models, but there is a certain level of governance that will need to be around it. But zooming back again, essentially in a bank there are two things you're after. You do it more efficiently, do the same thing, but you do it either faster, which is automatic loan decisions, for instance, do it cheaper, you have less people involved, and basically less bureaucracy, hopefully, and therefore you need less people. So all in all, that means that financial services become cheaper, i.e. you basically pay less interest. And the other aspect of it is that you can do more things, more personal. So is it taking into account that you have a specific hobby that might provide additional income, or your lifestyle is so very, very frugal, which comes out of your expense reports or your statement. So all these are becoming more nuanced options. So the banks and fintechs will be able to serve more specific niches, which are much, much smaller compared to what we are doing now. However, in my opinion, we're not quite there yet. So this picture is a little me playing around as an end user in ChatGPT and DALL-E, and I instructed the thing 4 times that this is the logo of LHV and can you create a picture that I want. And nevertheless, the outcome was not what I was looking for. So it's roughly right. It's roughly right what I got out of it, but it's precisely wrong. And this is exactly what banks cannot afford to be, because you don't want an account statement or a loan decision which is precisely wrong. You need to be everything correct by the cent. And whereas AI and machine learning models are statistical undertakings, then we need to take into account the fact that they are sometimes wrong. And especially in banking sector, there will be a lot more investment, I think, not in the models that generate a lot of stuff and come up and find new correlations, but there will be a lot more control models which are looking at limiting damage, making sure that we are absolutely right, and second guessing every decision that has come out of the model. So it's an important aspect. So I hope that in maybe 6 to 12 months, when I ask the machine to generate a person with an LHV hoodie, then the logo will come out right, because it's able to tolerate this kind of inputs. At the moment, it was just too complex. Going forward, when you're talking about finance or banking, you cannot get around regulators. So financial regulators are actually the driving force in any bank's activities right now. So I would evaluate that about anywhere between 40 to 60% of any bank's day-to-day activity is not directed towards serving their customers. It's directed towards serving their regulators. And obviously the regulator is out there to protect the public good. Banks are keeping people's deposits. Therefore, you need to take into account that these deposits need to be protected and not lent out recklessly. So financial regulators usually, besides the many issues and questions they have, they're giving guidance, they're creating the even floor for people, for banks to operate in. And the typical question you get from a regulator is that, how did you come to that conclusion? Can you describe the process of getting there? And this is incredibly hard when you're dealing with a statistically run machine learning or AI model. And the funny part is that there are now companies that provide language models that help you to explain things that come out of AI. So it's going kind of in reverse. You first apply the model to generate an output, and then you ask another model to explain why it was created this way. But I'm sure that there will be another type of regulator coming into the play, which is an AI regulator, if you wish, that is working on establishing controls and regulations around how AI models are run in the future. But that's already up for debate for many people. And to wrap things up, I think there will be a socio-economic impact as well, because AI in general is deemed to be superhuman, and our expectations on AI are also kind of superhuman. So a good example is the expectations that people have on self-driving cars. So the fact is that if you look at any statistics, then typically the self-driving cars are much more safe than people. However, when you look at the statistics, we should be taking away people from the wheels already. Let the machine do most of the work, at least. But AI is held to a much higher standard than human drivers, for instance, and therefore nobody really cares that human drivers kill a lot more people than, let's say, assisted or robotic drivers do when you convert it to miles driven and accidents that have happened. So the expectations are still superhuman, and I think people have yet to become cognizant of the fact that AI also makes mistakes, but the real question is not that we want the AI to be perfect. Actually, the benchmark should be that is it better than a human being doing that decision, and is that an okay compromise? So with that, I'll wrap up, and maybe there are questions.
Thank you, Kaspar. Thank you for that speech. We got a few questions as well via workshop. One is, the financial sector is very regulated. How to tackle this issue with AI? Does it make a problem? Financial regulators, do they make problems for you in applying AI in different places or not?
I think if any banker would say that a financial regulator is causing problems, then I mean, there's a reason why financial regulators go around and ask questions and demand things, because after all, they're out there to protect the public good, which is knowing that your deposits are safe in the bank and you can get them out anytime your contract allows and you're eligible to.
Yeah, this is
so, but is financial regulation going over the, let's say, the limit of comprehension? Quite often, yes, I would say, because if you have too much regulation, it's like arriving to a traffic junction where there are too many signs out, and people simply start ignoring them. AI will help there by a great deal, because essentially you can build a now with ChatGPT even, you can build a custom model, feed all the regulation in there and ask questions from it. And the same applies for banks. All the banks are required to generate their own procedures and documents and policies, which in turn you can feed into a language model and ask questions from it. So you have a helper bot to help you guide you what at least what should you read up on when you're making a decision.
We know that fraud is quite important issue in banks, and now AI is supporting fraud as well. How are you competing with the people who are trying to make money out of you or your clients?
I'm pretty sure that the criminals will be in the forefront of making use of all the tools out there. So I think it will be a very similar competition like we have with viruses and computer viruses and antiviruses. So banking sector will need to have in the future AI to fight AI-driven fraud as well. And so it will simply grow into a business of its own, I'm afraid.
But how kind of strategic is this AI issue now in banks? Quite often technology issues are somewhere on side, and business as usual is going, and some people somewhere are doing some sort of research. How strategic it is in LHV Bank, as well as what are the most important topics perhaps you see value for customers as well, for example, data security?
So if you look at typically you have to look at two things. What is the tactically important things, and at the moment, due to all the wars and sanctions and everything going around, this has had a pretty big impact on banks as well, especially in our region. So looking at fraud and reducing sanction screening kits and the likes, this is a pretty straightforward goal for any anti-financial crime tool out there. And obviously we are tackling this as seems to be the first low-hanging fruit, where you are able basically to speed up payments and reduce false alerts. But it is strategic as well, because LHV has already an AI team or machine learning team, however you want to put it. You don't really invest into people if you don't think it's going to play a role. So it is strategic, and it will affect also interacting with customers by a great deal, because more and more people would get used to asking ChatGPT things, and they actually will want to ask things from a bank in the same way and receive answers in real time. So we need to up our game in that regard.
Luckily, banks are profitable now, so you have enough money actually to invest in this. To end up with this, banks are digital now. Money is digital. But what about AI in physical world? I know that you have done triathlons a lot. Me too. And the current triathlon world record is 7 hours, 21 minutes. And it's from Mexico, and Christian Blumenfeld made it a few years back. Do you think that AI could support physical world as well in a way it kind of boosts digital world?
Most things will manifest themselves into a physical world sooner rather than later. So if you look at the average triathlete, then the amount of electronic gadgets hanging around is mind-boggling. You have power meters, heart rate monitors, computer screens, and now there are even some sensors which track that your fellow athletes are keeping the appropriate distance and not drafting it. So I'm sure that AI will enhance that field as well, especially when you look at things like training planning, because you're able to feed all the activities that people do, and also measure if the outcomes have been better or worse, and then build a model out of that. So I think physiological world is always, the material world is always affected, whatever computers come up with.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kaspar.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.